So, given a week ago or so, Peter and myself had a chat about some of the things, and it seems to have been reasonably, people have listened to it and commented on it. And building on the recording of this week from the TSC, okay, there's another, this was sort of mentioned in passing in that recording. There's another concern about the linear Laos approach to building the chain and building the volume, etc., which is that, so the TLDR is, I think it opens up particularly effective attacks on both performance and potentially temporal integrity. But that's what I'm going to present this, my thoughts, and get your feedback, guys. Right? So
see if I understand it. Yeah.
Well, see if I understand. But the point here is you don't let me bullshit. Right? You hold my feet to the fire, and that's what I want. Okay. So.
Yeah. So I'll try and understand it and see if I agree with you.
Yes, that's the point. Right, good. Right. So the point, the sort of the story so far is by changing the approach to doing the behavior, they've created the ability to do more work, and they've given a lot of basically you have this sort of roughly 50-50 chance that the EB will be built on, etc., etc. But the key, and then that's the sort of that, and the fact, is this effective, etc. This is just a sort of, you start thinking this way. What's apparent to me is that the node that gets to create that EB, that gets to put the certificate on chain, or is whose behavior is supposed to put the certificate on chain, has a huge.
So this is when an EB has already been created, and the next block producer, if they get the EB in time, should.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Should take the certificate for that, or make the certificate for that out of the votes that they've seen, and then put that certificate into the ranking block.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And build the next
and produce the next EB.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the reason is
because that's what actually incorporates the EB into the chain.
That's what it basically incorporates the EB into the chain. Right. And let me just say, the thinking, my thing is, you've given a lot of power to that node at that time, right? So my question is, what if it was slightly adversarial, right? I.e., it wasn't going to behave as it should. It decided to behave differently, right? What would happen? Okay, clear thought, because actually you can't assume it's non-adversarial. All of them are non-adversarial. So the first thing I thought about was, what happens if it just wrote zero-length blocks? Because it's perfectly legitimate in Preos to ignore the contents of the mempool and just write a block that's empty. And it will have to be perfectly legitimate. Therefore, it must be legitimate in linear Laos to do exactly the same.
Yeah, so that means ignoring the EB and just making an empty ranking block containing transactions, but an empty set of transactions.
Yes. Right now, well, the thing to point out is, if you do that in Preos today, yes, you slow down. You basically fail an opportunity of you fail to make progress by
1 block's worth.
By 1 block's worth.
Yeah.
Right.
So that opportunity cost.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you do extend the length of the chain.
Right. If you were to do that in linear Laos, you fail to extend the number of transactions in the thing by not just the ranking block, not just the mempool's worth at the time, because you can actually, what you fail to do is all of the IP, all of the EB.
Yeah. So you may have had a very large EB that has built up, and yeah, not only do you not put any transactions into your block, but you miss the EB as well. So there's a larger chunk of throughput that you're missing in that case.
And given the adversarial reasonable power, it could choose to do this at any time it wanted. So it could basically decide, oh, I'd like to slow down. So this system's already heavily loaded. I'm now going to make it even more heavily loaded, right? By basically ignoring, by basically losing 15 seconds worth of making that work disappear, right? Of about, right?
Well, at least 15 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, at least 15 seconds. So this is a pretty that's a pretty large hit, is what I'm trying to say, right? So, right? Would you
Okay,
agree?
but isn't that just because, I mean, the obvious point to make here would be just that's just because the throughput is higher. So any individual, chunk that you take out is bigger. Why is it not just proportional? Like in Preos, when you miss a block, the opportunity cost is proportional to the the throughput of the chain, and you just miss that one chunk. Why is this any worse?
Okay, well, basically because the amount of it's not an RB's worth anymore. It's not 100K. It's meg, right?
Right, but
Yes.
the throughput of the chain is correspondingly much bigger. So
Yeah,
as a fraction of the amount of the throughput, is it worse?
that's a good question. Right? I haven't worked that out, but just to me, it really feels this is a huge amount of data, right? Right, and it causes you. It means the opportunity cost is larger. Well, we agree that it's fractionally larger as well because in a system which you didn't have any EBs, whatever rate it was running at, it would just be a block's worth, right? Now it could be, I don't know how much bigger the EB is intended to be, but 20, 30, 40, 50 blocks. It's that sort, that's a huge amount more work. And therefore,
they're talking about multiple megabytes.
Yes, well,
compared to like 100 kilobytes for a.
It's multiple megabytes of transaction data, I assume.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. So that's that. Yeah. Okay. So let's say that's what. That's
So it's at least factors of 10, like or
100 bigger than. Okay. Right. That's a large amount of opportunity cost. This then creates a much bigger backlog that takes long. Given the rate at which you eat down the backlog, which is right. A small fraction can have a large effect. That's my first point. But actually, for me, that is not the killer point, right? I'm just saying it has that property. For me, the killer point is, imagine now I choose to look at the contents of the EB and notice, because I am that there's a transaction in there that I'd rather like to front run. Right. This is where I'm getting to. Is basically, the mechanism already exists because people use it already to put things into the local mempool to try and get timeliness, and there's a whole services out there. But and currently the front running capability is relatively. It's sort of theoretically there, but rather hard to extract. Now it becomes very easy to extract,
and it's hard to extract because the mempools are relatively small.
Yeah.
Factor of 2 of the block,
and the timing and the distributions.
And you're not guaranteed to see the mempool of everybody else. And if you really want to avoid front running, you send your transaction to your favored SPOs, and they put it in their mempool, and doesn't go to everybody else. So the first time anybody sees it is in a block.
Right. Okay. Now
and then it's relatively hard to roll back that block.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're saying is, currently, I would say Preos at the moment is extremely good, at protect. If you use it properly, you're really good at stopping front running occurring, right?
I mean, not perfect, but it's not.
But that perfection in this area is a really difficult. I don't know if it's feasible. Yes, yeah. But now I've got. Now I've got this marvelous capability. If I want to front run, right, I basically see all of the EB, right?
which might be 100 times the normal RB size, like a 10 megabyte block.
Yeah, and then I turn around and
ignore it.
Right, that's my point.
And put in the ones that you want. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is and to me, that's basically what I think. This to me. This is sort of I'm lying in the coffin and I'm hitting the side of a hammer on the nail at this point, because what you've done is you've created a huge incentive to do this, you've also created great opportunity in seeing things going into the future. And imagine, this front, imagine where, in order to deliver timeliness like we are at the moment, where people are distributing the objects and putting them in the mempools of your favorite people, imagine they still do that. The only way that can work is by not adopting the EB. Think about it.
I have to think about that one again.
You
do that one again.
You just said, one of the things that people currently do is if they don't want to be front run, they send the transaction to their favorite SPOs.
Yeah.
Who stick it in their mempools. Maybe don't even transmit, maybe
don't share it with other.
And then basically it gets incorporated. Imagine they want to keep offering that service.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they can get it, the only way they can assure it that it is incorporated.
I see. Yeah.
Right.
This is under the design that's in the current proposal, which says that each ranking block has either a certificate or transactions. Because if you can have both, then things are slightly different. But then maybe there's other opportunities for running.
Then basically, then you basically say, oh look, I see all these things in this EB, in this. I'm just saying you could. I think there were even worse opportunities. But as that is not the current proposal, let's not talk about. So that's basically the point.
Right. Yeah. So someone who wanted to offer the service of find this existing service of no front running by keeping their transactions secret between the party and the SPO until it goes into a block. Yeah, the only way they can assure that is by putting it actually into the block, the ranking block, because putting it into the EB presents an opportunity for front running for the next person.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm trying to say is this feels like I've given a huge now.
There's no new incentive for front running, but there is new opportunity.
Well,
I mean, the incentive is already there. If it exists.
Yeah, the incentive is already there. Now, people might say, oh, we have to, I mean, I'm sure, let's sort of brainstorm potential objections to the statement. One is, oh, we should introduce price against slashing and things like this. But we know that that's not a viable option in the sort of public chain, because and that basically if you started to go down that route, especially for small SPOs who might only produce one or two blocks, there's no way of checking that someone behaved badly and they should have behaved differently.
You mean if they don't include the EB, trying to penalize them for doing so?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's clearly very difficult because the evidence that they've behaved badly is not obvious. I mean, it might be obvious if you look at the transaction content, but if you're just looking at, the EB in the ranking block, you can't tell that they got the votes there in time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a local observation. Yeah. I can't know that you got. I mean, I can make some assumptions, but if it's marginal, I can't pin it on you.
And given, if you then start to make a statistical argument, right? Basically, you would only. I only do this when I need to. Yes, so I can. My false point, And actually, if I'm a small SPO, I might only be generating 2 blocks a month or 2 blocks an epoch or something. I fail to generate 50% of them. So your whole penalization model, doesn't work. It's a can of worms you don't want to open. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, I think my next comment here is basically, we knew, so when we were all discussing Perez, right, and I've really been Perez voting and all the rest of it, we saw that there was this, the ability to force the system into cooldown was a very powerful, it was pretty clear by the end of all of that work that if there was a value in forcing it into cooldown, it was very difficult to stop people exercising that property, right?
Right.
And what I'm saying here is these properties of not. Then that was a relatively large percentage. They could make. There was a sort of percentage game, and a lot of people had to. A large percentage of the stake had to make it. What we're saying here is, yes, you can still do this on a percentage. It's going to be on a percentage basis, of whether you're chosen or not. But when you are chosen, you have the absolute power at that point in time. So it's a different type of statistical argument.
Yeah.
It's if I get that choice, right?
If you get that chance.
if I get that chance, I can always win.
Yeah.
And I want to bias it this way, I will always win, right? That is a really difficult argument to make towards a financial system, which says there's somebody, if there's someone out there to get you, they will get you on a certain percentage of the time, and they will win the biased game. Any game, they will win that game at that point. That's the sort of, because you can't insure yourself against that, because actually I'm just saying, I'm just trying to, it sounds like, does it really matter? But actually it turns out when you extrapolate that into the model of how people use Cardano or would like to use Cardano, it would be seen as a fatal flaw in the system.
Yeah, when I was talking to people at the Rare Evo conference,
Yes.
One of the things that people told me was that they really wanted low latency, and we dug into the arguments a bit about that. Like, what do you want it for? Why does low latency really matter? And it seemed to me, from trying to understand the problem they were trying to solve, was it wasn't really that they cared about the latency, although to some degree they cared about no front running.
Right. Yeah, and actually, that was sort of in the back of my head when I was thinking about this.
And this is to do with like traditional finance stuff, like putting in orders, that kind of thing. People want to. I mean, some people believed that it was about I want instant finality, and that is what guarantees me no front running. But actually, no front running guarantees you no front running.
Yeah,
and that doesn't necessarily require immediate finality. You can have
So
it's about securing the path from transaction submission through to being included in a block in a relatively final way that's not likely to get reverted.
Yeah.
So there is, it's adjacent to finality, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's a sort of conditional immutability where the control over that condition is a purely random process that can't be biased. I mean, that's an acceptable risk, right? In industry, that's often the case. They'll accept risks, but if someone can trigger that risk, because especially if the unit, it's just like taking out an insurance policy on somebody and then offering them to get the money, but they don't issue those types of contracts, right? So I'm just saying, I'm agreeing. So Peter, does this make sense, right? Because you're the sort of this is the first time, it's sort of as the
Yeah. I mean, I think I mean, to some extent, I do follow Duncan's point following your argument that the simply having a higher throughput to the chain increases the potential for front running, right? Because there's just more stuff in flight that you could have a look at and decide that you're going to do something about.
Well, that's actually increasing. I would slight twist on that, because what you're basically doing is you are, by including by reference, you're basically having more work in progress. Is actually right. It's actually not.
Yes. So if you can get a higher throughput that just settles more stuff in the chain more quickly,
which is lower work in progress,
which without increasing the work in progress, then you haven't increased the opportunity for front running.
Which is what you would have, for example, if you used Preos with just really large blocks or very frequent large blocks, for example.
That's right, and did so in a sort of limited geographical area or something where.
Well, that's what you might need to do to make it
work
sufficiently frequently. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. I mean, basically, so looking back, what we're saying is this whole EBMC is increasing the work in progress, and we're finding some inherent
issues with that. Yes. So what if we had some kind of sharding system that had more concurrency going on? Doesn't that also increase the amount of work in progress?
Right. I was also thinking this, like what because I was working. I used to work on the Leos. I was on the Leos design team for a while, and we were looking at full fat Leos, full concurrency Leos. And so now I'm thinking, and we at that time we were not thinking about front running. yeah, it makes me wonder, would full Leos also be vulnerable to this problem? And it's not immediately obvious to me. So in full Leos, at least the design that we were looking at before I was not stopped being on the team anymore, was you had IBs which get created by people, and then EBs reference those IBs. And the design that I really liked that we were getting towards was one where there was an extremely high chance that all IBs would get picked up one way or another, because EBs could collect overlapping sets of IBs, and EBs referenced previous EBs, and basically it was almost impossible for EBs to get lost or IBs to get lost. They would just get picked up by later RBs. And the order of transactions was determined by the order of the IBs. So when the IBs and everything, when the IBs get ordered later in a ranking block, well, by an EB and then an RB, the order of the IBs was going to be the slot order, of the IBs themselves being created. Right, and of course, you create multiple IBs in the same slot concurrently, but those should be in different shards, not depend on each other, and that's a random process for creating those IBs. And then that's just done on, and then I think those were then ordered on like the VRF or something. So of the IBs.
So there wasn't, from the perspective of a single shard and there wasn't that much work in progress, because those IBs were effectively freezing the work in progress, and then
per shard there may not be that much work in progress. Right. Overall, there's a lot of work in progress because there's a lot of shards.
Yes, but they but the point is, in order to front run, you have to be in the same shard, effectively, right? Because the shards were separated. You couldn't. The amount of the cross traffic was limited. Would have to be limited to certain. You couldn't do everything. You have to move your transactions, move your context into the shard, and then someone else will have to front run you in that shard. Which sounds to me. But
like also, I think there isn't that same opportunity of saying I've seen a load of stuff and I can ignore it and put my thing in first.
Because that's the point I was about to make. Is basically in that situation, you didn't get on average 15 seconds to make all of those decisions. You basically had to keep acting the timing very quickly. You had, what I'm saying is, in the system that has been proposed, the linear Laos, I've got a whole, I got a 50. If I know I'm going to come up, and I'm going to make this opportunity. I got lots of time to make all that, to arm the hazard, do the analysis, work out what I'm going to do, construct a new transaction, put it in, to front run. Oh, wait a minute, I can front run that one. Right, there's a demand out there. I'm going to go and they're selling X, I'm going to buy X, or so, whatever the front running strategy is. Okay, you've got lots of time, which you don't have in the other situations.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think through the whole thing, on the fly. But my sense is that in the full Leos, you wouldn't be able to do that, because you would have to have seen. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could see because it's in flight, but then you would have to get your front-running transactions into new IBs and somehow get them earlier in the sequence than the IBs you've already seen. And that's not going to be trivial, because the party that's in control of making the RB is not the same as the one that's making the EB, and right. The EB has to get voted on by, a large fraction of the stake.
Well, the point is, voting doesn't help you with the sequencing question. It only helps you with the veracity question. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think this is possibly what you're striking here is that the linear Laos approach has given power of sequencing to people, not power of it's the sequencing and resequencing power that's been given to the node at the point at which it has to. It's not the voting on the EBs that's the problem. It's the incorporation of the certificate. It's the power of not doing that is a huge power. Which can, and what all I wanted to do is I identified this one risk. Okay, so I'm saying, because partially what I'm trying to say is, look, you might say, oh, well, we can fix this one issue, but actually I think there's it's going back to the very, what we started with this is by making this change, you change the power dynamics of the attacker. And this is one of the, what we see as one of the effects of that power dynamics. That's right. Now, obviously, us three, we could chat for hours and, whatever. But I think, that sort of captures, you don't see this as, I was going to suggest we stop the recording now, in that I think it makes the point, right? If you, I think the risk is real, right? It's a genuine and real risk. And by us three having a chat, I mean, all I'm basically saying is, am I being, I think that sort of says, if you see it as a risk as well, right? Then I think that it's good. It's good enough to start telling other people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think the ranking block producer on their own can just see the EB, decide, see what's in it, ignore it, put their own ranking block containing transactions first, and then the remainder of that EB will get picked up by the next person, which means you've got your transactions in first.
Well, okay. Well then, I'm going to stop it there.